You might think that having significantly underperformed on 2 previous government programmes, A4E would be out of the picture. But you'd be wrong. They were one of the main winners in the work programme, gaining the second largest share of the multi-billion-pound contracts. The list of winners contains other companies whose previous performance is hardly stellar. Philip Collett from the employment training organisation Goals UK is advising some of the firms delivering the new programme.
A lot of them are the old organisations, regrouped, partnering up in slightly different ways. They are very much the usual suspects. There are a number of providers that I judge as not delivering particularly good service, not creating the right conditions for change to take place.
Were you surprised when you saw those lists of who'd won all the contracts? Were there any there where you thought, I'm surprised they got one?
You expect me to answer that? There were some surprises, I have to say.
St Helens was very focused on mining at first. Then they went.
Martin is one of the 2.5 million people that these firms will be helping in the next 5 years.
We used to have UGB glassmakers. They've gone. Pilkington's Glass. They've gone.
We're driving into the centre of St Helens. On the way, Martin points out the ghosts of its industrial past. We're heading for the job centre, where he's a familiar face. He's been signing on there since 2004. Martin's been on job schemes before with A4E, and now he's with them again, as they're one of the organisations running the work programme in the North West.
The first time I went there, I got a letter saying to come in for an appointment. Apparently they'd double booked me. So it was, come in, sign these papers and go. It didn't fill me with much confidence. I went back for the rest of the initial appointment, and they went through my CV, what they can do. They criticised it.
What upset Martin was that this was the very same CV which had been put together with, you guessed it, A4E, with the same staff, in the same town, but during a previous government welfare scheme.
I actually felt really down and sad about it, and it actually got me angry, because I can't see how they can do anything that they haven't done in the past times. It's completely inconsistent. You don't know where you are. If you do a good CV that one says good, your confidence gets a little bit of a boost. But then you go to somebody else and they say it's bad, and your confidence just drops again.
This matters to the long-term unemployed, who need a lot of confidence building to get them back into the labour market.
They're telling you that it's your fault you've not got a job, but they don't come up with any solutions.
You're going to be with them for 2 years, potentially, aren't
Yes.
you? Hopefully not. Hopefully, you might get a job. But how do you feel about that?
In part, it feels like a prison sentence.
It's tough to get people like Martin into work, much tougher than many people think. And with a payment by results system, the fear is that in order to make money, companies will have to cut corners and deliver a poor quality service. And there's some anecdotal evidence that this is already happening. We've spoken to numerous people on the work programme who, even just a few months into the scheme, are already unhappy with their treatment.
My name is Russ. I'm on the work programme down in the Devon and Cornwall area. I've had 2 meetings and they're totally ignoring me ever since. That was about 2 months ago. My partner has basically had the same kind of thing. Now, they've since phoned her up and said, we're sorry we haven't been in touch, we've changed your advisor, but it's due to the fact that we've had too many people referred to us by the job centre. They cannot cope with a level of demand on it at all.
My name is Richard, and as yet I have to experience the full work programme. The whole exercise seemed to be geared around the assumption that the customers, a rather a strange word in the circumstances, were either unintelligent, illiterate, innumerate, inarticulate.
I'm Andrew, and I'm on the work programme in Blackburn. 6 appointments so far. It's gone as far as looking at the CVs, and that's about it.
Last month, the think tank, the Social Market Foundation, produced a report questioning whether companies on the work programme could reach the tough minimum targets and make a profit. If that's the case, why would so many of them then want to bid for contracts in the first place? Ian Mulhern, director of the Social Market Foundation, says they couldn't afford not to.
The work programme is the only game in town there isn't another contract to bid for, essentially. So for providers, they really had to be on this one. Many of them will have felt that they know that the government can't let this programme fail. They didn't have very great information about what was achievable, so they were entitled to rely on what DWP said was achievable in their bidding. Finally, I think many of them will take the view, and have taken the view, that as long as they are not the laggards of the pack and performing reasonably well relative to others, then they won't lose their contracts. The government will have to step in if the economy doesn't pick up. Because we must remember here that everybody knows the government can't let this thing fail.
When you talk to them, what sense do you get of how they think it's going to pan out?
I get the sense that most providers think that the government will have to step in some way, because they know that it can't be allowed to fall over. The alternative for the department, and indeed for them, is not really at all palatable.
We've spoken to several senior industry insiders who say that's exactly what some of the big providers have been saying too. It doesn't matter if the sums don't add up. A few years down the line, they'll go back to the government to renegotiate and get more money. The Employment Minister, Chris Grayling, says if they do, there's no more cash on the table.
There's no blank cheque sitting in the cupboard to bail them out. They've signed up to a deal, and that deal is what we expect them to stick to.
So definitely no bailing out, and even if it's one of the really big providers who get into trouble?
There's no question of saying, well, if it all gets a bit difficult, we'll look after you. We won't. I've got people sitting outside the work programme who'd love to be part of it, and I'll have no compunction in making changes if people can't stand the heat.
The consequences of losing out on one of these contracts can be devastating. Laurie Russell is chief executive of the employment charity The Wise Group, and having run previous job schemes in Scotland, he was confident they'd secure one of the work programme contracts.
Ministers were saying that the work programme would build on successful organisations that could perform well and had good infrastructure and good relationships, good connectivity within the region to employers and other organisations. We were therefore confident that we could be successful in the work programme.
But they weren't, and it's meant laying off 40% of their staff, and they predict turnover will be down by a third this year. We've learned just how far one of their competitors was willing to go to secure the contract. We've seen a confidential document which showed that in Scotland, Ingeus, the biggest winner of contracts across Britain, offered a 60% discount for part of the contract. We wanted to talk to Ingeus about this, but they weren't available for an interview. In a statement, though, they told us,
Ingeus offered a competitive pricing structure that reflected our confidence in our ability to deliver long-term outcomes for our clients. The work programme contracts are based on payments by results, and the bulk of payments are made to providers when they are successful in helping their clients sustain in work.
They certainly weren't the only company to offer a discount, and it's led to accusations that the government's trying to solve a problem on the cheap, putting price above quality. It's a charge the Employment Minister, Chris Grayling, denies.
No, that's not right. It was quality particularly that we were concerned about. Obviously, price was a factor, and it's obviously a significant factor, but more than anything else, we were looking for two things. One was a sense that the bidders had the ability to move to the next level in achievement terms. The work programme is designed to push beyond where we've been before with previous programmes. Past programmes were basically designed to a template delivered by government. And then alongside that, because we did not believe that any single organisation had the capability of delivering the whole work programme, we wanted clear evidence that they had the ability to forge teams of organisations that could work together in delivering the work programme.
When he launched the programme back in April, Chris Grayling championed its big society credentials. 40% of contracts, he said, would go to the voluntary sector and charities. But in the end, they got less than half that. Laurie Russell says it's ended up as a way for large companies to make money.
Well, I think the very mechanistic procurement process was really aimed at big business, but that's been achieved at the expense of, I believe, good quality third sector organisations, where we did have a track record of providing good performance for government over a number of years. The early statements from ministers about the big society ended up as big business winning.
Hundreds of small organisations did win business as subcontractors. They'll be working for prime providers who'll be getting these voluntary groups and charities to deliver their programmes on the ground whilst taking a cut of fees, normally around 25%. But the fear is that even those big firms who are taking on the scheme themselves will then pass on their trickiest clients to the subcontractors. Dan Finn is Professor of Social Inclusion at Portsmouth University and an expert on welfare schemes.
The real concern, I think, particularly for voluntary organisations and smaller providers, is that prime providers will cherry-pick and select out the more easily placed people and then pass on, offering the same prices, but passing on the more difficult cases to the subcontractors. And then those subcontractors will have much more difficulty in getting those into jobs and in getting the cash flow that they need to pay for their staff, pay for their premises and so on.
The government is hoping that involving these small organisations can help this programme to succeed where all others have previously failed. But it's hard to see how.
Hello. How are you? I'm pleased to meet you. Come on in.
Hayley Taylor's trying to do her bit in lowering the number on benefits. Last week, she was touring around the country with an online jobs company, offering advice to the unemployed. But having previously delivered government welfare programmes, is she optimistic that this scheme will work?
The big difference this time, they say, with the work programme is it's all about payment by results. It's not just about getting in a job for one day, sustainable jobs. You don't sound like you're convinced.
The new work programme is just another name for what we've already had before, which is the Flexible New Deal and the New Deal that I originally started working on. It's another system that everybody's pinning hopes on, but nothing is going to change until everybody can go back to the brass tacks, which is to treat each person as an individual. Grouping people together is just not going to work, because what someone that's been long-term unemployed needs and what someone that's been newly made redundant needs, they're two totally different things. You put people poles apart, you're asking for trouble. No one's going to move anywhere. If anything, they're going to sink lower down than they already are. We have to come back to, these are people, these are real people.
People like Martin.
St Helens Job Centre.
Just next to the police station as well, I think.
Yes.
Like all of the unemployed people we spoke to, Martin wanted to work. He didn't have unrealistic expectations. And after 7 years on the dole, what would it mean if he could get a job?
I've got friends all over the world. I've got cousins in America I haven't ever seen. I'd love to see them. But it's more, I want to help my mum out. I want to give more money to her for housekeeping. It would help my family. Freedom. It would give me freedom to live my life how I wish.
But getting him this freedom won't be easy or cheap. His work programme provider could earn thousands of pounds if it does get him a job, but could equally lose thousands if it doesn't. The success of the scheme will be judged by how many people like Martin are employed and taken permanently off the dole. All governments have to be seen to be doing something to tackle benefits, but the uncomfortable truth is that there's no silver bullet. The work programme may make a dent in the figures, but the evidence from previous projects is that it's unlikely to make much of a difference. That edition of The Report was presented by me, Simon Cox, and produced by Hannah Barnes.